Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our assembly on Friday, the 14th of January. We are going to be having a think today about something that's been in the news quite a lot recently. So this assembly is called a News Think Assembly because it will help us to understand some of the things that are in the news. The thing that we are going to be thinking about in the news is a country called Afghanistan. And some people are saying that there is a crisis in Afghanistan, which means people are going through very difficult times. So we're going to have a think about what that might mean. And at the end of this, we're going to understand what the word refugee means, because you might be hearing about refugees in the news. And we're going to understand what asylum seeker means. If somebody is an asylum seeker, what does that mean? We're also going to understand why we should all help refugees and asylum seeker families. And we're all going to understand how we can help families who are refugees or asylum seeking families. Okay, can you take a minute to tell your next door neighbour what you see in this picture? What's happening? And you can pause the assembly to give you a chance to tell your neighbour what you think is going on in this picture from BBC News a few months ago. Okay, you can start the assembly again, and hopefully there were lots of different ideas about what might be going on in this picture. But this picture was taken in Afghanistan a few months ago by a BBC News journalist. And you can see there's lots of stuff lying around on the ground, lots of papers. And there's a dad carrying his daughter, we think. And there are lots of people wandering around, and there are some soldiers too in the picture. Okay, can you have another think with your neighbour, and can you together work out what do you think these people are thinking about? What is the little child thinking about? What is the dad thinking about? And what is this soldier thinking about? What do you think is important to the child, the dad, and the soldier at this moment? You can pause the assembly to try and work out what you think might be going through their heads, what they are thinking about, what is really important for them right now, what are they focused on? Okay, welcome back. Some of the ideas you may have had were that the child is looking a bit scared, tense. You can see that the child is looking at something that we can't see because it's off the picture, but there might be something a bit scary or worrying in the area. You can see that the dad is looking in the same direction, so he's looking quite worried too. And you can see the soldier is also looking in the same direction. So something is going on that's making all of these people feel quite worried. In Afghanistan right now, not everyone feels safe, and everyone deserves to be safe. Can you think about that statement? Everyone deserves to be safe. Do you agree or disagree with that statement? Yeah, I think most people would agree that everyone deserves to be safe. And in Afghanistan right now, not everyone feels safe. Some people feel that the new government is not very safe. Some people think that all of the fighting and wars that have been going on in Afghanistan recently are very unsafe. And there are other reasons why people in Afghanistan might not feel very safe right now. For example, lots of girls don't feel it's safe enough for them to go to school because the new government is saying that girls shouldn't be going to school. And lots of women are also feeling unsafe to go to work or university or school because they are also being told by some of the government in Afghanistan that they shouldn't be doing those things. They're not allowed to anymore. Okay, after assembly, can you talk with your teacher about the image that you've just seen and some of the things that we might know are going on in Afghanistan? And that will give you a chance to ask your teacher questions or talk about things that you want to talk about. So we're going to leave Afghanistan now, and we're going to come all the way back to the United Kingdom. In fact, we're going to the country of England, and we're going to visit one of England's biggest cities called Liverpool. So what do you think is going on in this picture in Liverpool? You can see 4 people in the picture. There's the man on the left with his lovely checked tartan shirt. And then there's the woman next to him with her lovely blue spotty dress. And then there's the man here with the grey shirt. And then next to him, there's the woman wearing the red head covering. So what do you think is going on in this picture in Liverpool? Have a moment or two to talk about your ideas. Okay, welcome back. So this picture in Liverpool is showing 2 refugees. So 2 people who have had to leave their country because it's no longer safe there, and they want to come to the United Kingdom, to England, to find safety and to create a new home and a new life for themselves. And the 2 people on the end, the lady wearing the red head covering and the man wearing the tartan shirt, have arrived in England to try and find safety. And the 2 people here in the middle are helping them to settle into England and to have a new life here. And we would call people who have had to run away from their country to keep safe, we would call them refugees. And people who want to stay in a new country, who are asking permission to stay in a new country, we would call them asylum seekers if they are running away from danger or extreme poverty or any other kind of horrible thing. So when there's fighting or famine or not enough water, which is called a drought, people often leave the place they call home, the place where they live, and they move to another place. And these people can be called refugees because they are trying to find refuge, which means safety. It's really important that we make all families welcome who are refugees. So how do we do this? Let's imagine that tomorrow a family of refugees or asylum-seeking family arrived in our school tomorrow. What would be some of the things that we would have to stop doing so that we could make them feel safe and welcome? And what would be some of the things that we would have to start doing so that we could make them feel safe and welcome? I wonder if your class can come up with 10 ideas for stop doing and 10 ideas for start doing so that we could make a refugee or asylum seeking family welcome in our school and in our community. So you can pause the assembly while you're having a think about 10 things we could do. Okay, welcome back. Did you come up with lots of good ideas? I could hear some of the ideas and some of them were amazing. I heard somebody saying we could organise a play date so that the new children who might not speak much English or any English, or who might not know anybody at all, they could start to meet new friends and start to play with new friends. I also heard somebody saying we might need to slow things down because if a child has come from a dangerous country where there's lots of fighting or bombs going off or unexpected things happening, they might be quite scared still, and they might find really unexpected things or very loud things quite scary because they're still feeling nervous, scared. So we might need to quieten it down a bit, slow it down a bit. And we might need to smile. We might need to find out what they like, what they don't like. We might need to find out what they eat if they haven't had a school lunch like our school lunches before. There are lots of things that we might have to start doing, and there are also things we might need to stop doing. So for the older children, this is the United Nations Convention on Refugees, and it explains what the United Nations thinks a refugee is. So it's a person who has a fear of being persecuted. So that means punished or even killed for reasons of race, skin color, religion, nationality, because they belong to a particular group, or because they believe something politically. Maybe they believe the government in their country is wrong or bad or corrupt. So a refugee could be somebody who has left their home country because they are being punished or treated badly for any of those reasons. And as a result, they are unable to get protection in their own country and they can't go back. An asylum seeker is someone who has left their home country and has asked to live in another country like England or Scotland or Northern Ireland or Wales. and they are waiting for a decision by the government on whether they're allowed to stay here or not. So if somebody's waiting for that decision, they are an asylum seeker. So I'm going to tell you a story now. And you can see in the picture, this is Mohammed and his child Kamar. So Mohammed was a very successful businessman. He had a big company that was very, very successful, and he employed 25 people in his factories and shops. He earned money for his wife, Kamar, and their 7 other children. And he was proud that he could also help people in the community when they needed help too. He had even built a beautiful home for the family. But after living in his beautiful new home for just 6 months, it was destroyed by a rocket, which is a kind of bomb. The blast left one of his children, Yamat, almost completely deaf. And very quickly, the family's dream became a nightmare. Mohammed and his family had to run away from Syria to Egypt. And they thought that this would just be for a little while, until the fighting had stopped. But a year and a half later, with no end to the fighting in Syria, and all of their money running out, they decided they could no longer stay in Egypt. So, in May 2014, Mohammed made the dangerous journey in a boat across the Mediterranean Sea with 450 other people on a fishing boat. They were on the boat for 15 days, and it was very dangerous before landing in Italy. Then he travelled to France, to Calais, and eventually made the crossing to the United Kingdom, to England. He was hidden in a refrigerated lorry for 15 hours in the freezing cold. But he arrived in the UK in July, and he asked the government for asylum. He asked if he could stay here so that he could be safe. Then he contacted an organisation called the Red Cross, which is a charity that helps people. And he asked them to bring his children and his wife to Glasgow, where he was going to be settled and found a new life. He was constantly worrying about his family in Egypt, and he couldn't sleep at night knowing that they had very little money left. But finally, the family were brought together in Glasgow in February 2015. And today, they lived in a cramped, busy, 3-bedroomed flat in Glasgow. And the bare walls feel a long, long way from the family's very rich life in Syria. Yamat is waiting to be fitted with a hearing aid because she now is totally deaf in one ear after the rocket or bomb landed near her home. So, quite a powerful story, wasn't it? Sometimes we don't think about people who have these incredible, dangerous journeys that they have to go on because their country is no longer safe. So sometimes it's nice to think about how difficult that can be for people, and sometimes it's nice to think about what could we do to help. Think about why you might have to leave your country if you lived somewhere else, and maybe have a go at writing the reasons down. So it might be fighting or war, but there are lots of other reasons why you might become a refugee. Can you also write down or talk about how you would feel about leaving your country? How would it make you feel, especially if you had to leave the rest of your family behind? Some countries build walls and fences like the one in the picture to stop refugees from getting in. When we were on our Christmas holidays, Poland started to build a huge fence to keep out refugees. What do you think about this? And what would you do? Let's think about this again. If a child from Afghanistan, a refugee, was coming to join us in our school, what would you do to make them feel welcome? Have a think again about what every one of us could do to help. And I want you to think again about asylum seekers in particular. Some people know when they are asylum seekers, waiting to hear if they can stay in a new country, that they can never go back to the country they left behind. We need to treat asylum seekers very kindly because they have often had a very difficult time, more difficult than we can ever imagine. Life can be hard for asylum seekers. Asylum seekers are not allowed to work while they're waiting for the decision on whether they can stay, and they have to survive on as little as £5 per day for the whole family. Fewer than 1 in 500 people in the United Kingdom are refugees or asylum seekers, and more than half of the world's refugees are actually children. How can we help? Here is a refugee, and you can see the sign he's holding up. I am a human. If you want to know more about refugees and asylum-seeking families and children, you can watch the movie on the link in the screen. You might also want to tell people at home about what you've learned today, and you might want to tell them about how you feel it's important we treat asylum seekers and refugees kindly. And if you want to do something as a class, you can click on this link here and find out about the Afghanistan Crisis Appeal. You might want to raise some money, or you might want to gather some things that the Red Cross can take to Afghanistan to help people there who are trying to become a refugee and escape their country to have a safer life. Well, thank you for listening to our assembly about refugees and asylum seekers, and I hope it made everybody think, and maybe we can do something to help. You could talk to your teachers if there's something you want to do. Whether it's telling people at home what you've learned, or something bigger and longer to organise, like helping a group of refugees somewhere in the UK or somewhere else in the world. Have a good weekend, and thank you very much for working so hard when we've all come back to school after the Christmas holiday. It's been lovely to see you, and I know your teachers have loved hearing all your news and have loved having you back in class. To our teachers who've not been feeling very well, and our PSAs who've not been feeling very well, and our nursery team, we hope you feel well soon and you can come back to school and join in all of the fun. Have a good weekend, everybody.